one other thing I wanted to ask you specifically, because you were there and you knew the man, and we all have this larger-than-life picture of Walt Disney. And over the years, there have been urban legends that have told stories all the way from him being cryogenically frozen to, this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But specifically, okay, so you were the first African-American hired by him. And we've heard attitude, was he racist, was the company, I mean, it was the 50s, it was a different time. Could you speak to what it was like, not only as a young black person at that time, working in that environment, were you aware of being treated any differently, and specifically about Walt's approach to racism or his character?
Okay. I think one of the great things about any creative endeavor, and creative people in particular, is that they look at people as what they can do, what they can contribute. And so when I came to Disney, even though it was the 1950s, and a lot of things hadn't changed, and a lot of old attitudes were still in place, I was never aware of any body or any kind of racism or anything of that sort at the Disney studio. I like to remind people that as far back as the 1930s, even before I got to Disney, guys like Bill Melendez and there's another Latino animator who used to argue with Walt Disney over in Glendale. Forgotten his name now, but Walt really didn't care who or what you were. He cared about your talent and ability. So even when I came to the studio in the 1950s, people said, well, weren't you concerned about being the only black artist in the studio? I never even thought about it. I didn't think of myself as being the only black artist. I thought of myself as being another young artist at Disney with a whole bunch of other young artists who were just trying to make it. So the idea of my color, I never even gave it a second thought. And I don't think anybody there did either, because what they were concerned about was how well can you draw? How well can you paint? What talents do you have? That's what mattered. And I think that's what's so great. Walt Disney was the same way. He simply didn't care. Now, people said Walt had these attitudes because he was a Midwesterner and he wasn't used to minorities, and they have these preconceived notions that Walt was anti-Semitic. They had thoughts that he was racist, but that wasn't true. And I can, as I told Walt's daughter, Diane, I can attest to this because I was there. There were stories that Walt didn't hire Jews. Well, I went to the studio and there were plenty of Jewish artists. So then obviously Walt didn't know they were Jewish, even though his name was Ed Solomon or anything. And then they said, well, Walt Disney doesn't hire black people. And I thought, well, I thought, I would have thought he would have noticed. Walt used to walk down the lot, and again, like I said, he always walked by himself. He didn't have an entourage. He'd be walking along by himself, and Walt would see me, and he would always say the same thing. He'd always say, "Hiya, kid." He always called me kid. "Hiya, kid." So clearly, he knew I was working for him.